at my son's wedding. My daughter-in-law dragged me across the reception hall and introduced me as the family parasite. The words hit harder than the grip on my wrist. I am Julie Bennett, 70 years old, and I had come here praying for peace, yet humiliation found me before the first toast. Everyone, this is Julie, Lila announced, her voice bright and sharp. Our family parasite. Her friends gasped, then laughed as if she had delivered a clever punchline. I tried to pull my hand free. Lila, please, why would you say that? She leaned in, still smiling at her audience. Because it is true, Julie, you live with us. You take and take, someone has to say it out loud. Aunt Miriam, already warmed by champagne, chimed in from behind her. She is our disgrace, Cousin Victor repeated it proudly, as if adding volume would make it justice. My face burned. I felt years of small humiliations gather behind my ribs, pressing upward until I could barely breathe. I searched the room for my son. Daniel stood only a few steps away, frozen, his expression shifting from confusion to something darker. His tie hung crooked, his hair slightly undone from dancing, but his eyes, those were clear. For the first time, he truly saw me. Lila, he said quietly, what did you just call my mother? She shrugged. Carefree, Daniel. Come on. It was a joke. Everyone knows she... He cut her off, his voice low but unshakable. You humiliated her. In front of our family. In front of our children's teachers. In front of me. Lila's smile faltered. You are overreacting. No, he said. I have been underreacting for years. He took a breath, steadying himself, then spoke the words that split the night open. Pack your things. You are not coming home with us tonight. The music kept playing, but the room held still. Lila stared at him as if he had turned to stone. I felt no victory, only a strange, trembling sadness. And as the whispers swirled around us, I knew this moment was not the beginning of the end. It was the end of a story I had been living in silence and the start of the truth I could no longer avoid. When my husband died, the quiet in our old Wagner Terrace home grew so heavy it felt like it pressed against my ribs. Daniel came by one evening and sat at my kitchen table, the same place where he once did his homework. He reached across the worn wood and said, Mom, you should not be alone in that house. Move in with us. Let us take care of you. Lila nodded eagerly beside him. It would help everyone. Julie, truly, you would be saving our future. With a bigger place in West Ashley, the kids would finally have space. She squeezed my hand as if the decision were already made. I sold my house for a bit more than $200,000. I watched strangers walk through it during the last showing, their footsteps echoing where my husband once laughed. I tried to remind myself I was doing the right thing. Daniel sent listings, and Lila coordinated appointments as if she had been waiting for this moment. When the purchase closed, Daniel hugged me. You made this possible, he said. We will never forget what you did. I held on to those words. At first, the move felt like an embrace. Lila thanked me for helping with the down payment and placed a welcome basket in the guest room. The children ran in and out, calling me Nana, with sticky hands and bright faces. I unpacked slowly, stacking boxes in the hallway until I had time to sort them. Months passed. The boxes migrated to the garage without anyone telling me why. My framed photos disappeared from the living room wall, replaced with curated pieces Lila said matched the aesthetic. When friends visited, Lila introduced the house as hers and Daniel's, while I stood beside her, smiling through the sting. One night, as I helped Mia with her spelling words, Lila walked by the door and said, almost casually, "We are so lucky you have a place to stay, Julie. Everything works better this way." I felt something shift inside me then, something I could not name but could no longer ignore. There was a moment when I realized my generosity had stopped being a gift and had become something else entirely. The shift did not happen in one moment. It came in small cuts that stung only after I realized how many there were. One afternoon, Lila invited 2 of her friends over for coffee. I carried in a tray of cups, glad to help, when one of them said, "This house is beautiful. Lila, you 2 must work so hard to afford it." Lila laughed lightly. "Well, we manage. And Julie is lucky she does not pay rent. That helps." Her tone was playful. But the words settled heavily. I set the tray down and forced a smile. Her friends exchanged polite glances, unsure whether to laugh. I excused myself to the kitchen, hoping Daniel had not heard. A few days later, Aunt Miriam called. "Victor tells me you are living there for free," she said, her voice dripping with something sharp. "You have always been soft-hearted, Julie. But taking advantage of your own son is surprising even for you." I tried to respond, but she continued talking over me until she finally hung up. That evening, as I folded laundry, I heard Lila's voice drifting from the hallway. "After the wedding, we will figure out what to do with her," she whispered to someone on the phone. "We cannot keep carrying everything on our backs." The words settled like cold stones in my stomach. The worst cut came from Mia. She sat beside me at the dining table, tapping her pencil. "Nana," she asked softly, "Mommy says you do not help. Is that true?" My throat tightened. "I help in the ways I can, sweetheart." She nodded, but confusion lingered in her eyes. Children do not lie. They repeat. Later that night, Daniel noticed the tension in the room. "Everything okay?" he asked, glancing between me and Lila. I opened my mouth, but Lila slipped her arm through his. "Your mother worries too much," she said, kissing his cheek. "It is family stuff, Guy. I will handle it." Daniel let it drop. He always did. Something cold moved through me, then not anger. Not yet. Just the quiet awareness that I was no longer considered part of the home I helped build. And I wondered what Lila meant about the plans she had for me after the wedding. Grace arrived at my door with a folder tucked under her arm. She had the kind of expression that meant she had been thinking too much and finally decided to speak. "Julie," she said, "you need to look at the refinancing papers you signed." "All of them." I tried to wave her off. "It was years ago." Daniel said it was routine. Grace set the folder on the kitchen table. "Routine paperwork does not keep a woman awake at night the way you have been. Sit. We are doing this together." My hands shook as I opened the first document. The numbers blurred for a moment, but Grace pointed. "Right there. Where is your contribution from the sale of your house?" The space was blank, not reduced, not mislabeled. Missing. I flipped through the pages. "Maybe it is in another section," I said, though my voice already faltered. Grace pressed her lips together. "Julie, they did not include it." I moved to the deed itself, hoping for reassurance. Instead, I saw 2 signatures printed neatly, Daniel Bennett and Lila Hart Bennett. My name did not appear anywhere. I felt the room tilt. "I thought it was just understood," I whispered. "Understood does not hold up in court," Grace replied. She pulled another sheet forward, one I did not recognize. "Look at this," she said. "It is a reimbursement form." At the top, my name had been typed in bold. Caregiver credit. It read, "Mileage, groceries, incidentals." I never filed this. I said, "I know," Grace answered. "But someone did, and they did it under your name." My stomach turned. Lila had complained for years that I did not contribute. Now I realized she had quietly written me into the books as if I had been taking from them, not giving. The weight of it settled inside me. The house I helped buy did not legally include me. The woman who mocked me had already prepared the paperwork to erase me completely. Grace rested a hand over mine. You need to understand what this means. I nodded, trying to steady my voice, because if I had no home, I had to know what they were planning to do with me. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I tried to steady myself. I offered to help with the planning, but Lila waved me off each time. Just watch the kids. Julie, we have it under control. Her voice was polite, but firm enough to close the conversation. I watched boxes of decor arrive. Lists scatter across the dining table. Phone calls blur into late-night strategy sessions. I was never invited to sit with them. When they took engagement photos downtown, I asked if they wanted a family shot. Lila smiled thinly. Oh, the photographer is keeping it modern. Maybe next time. There was never a next time. A few afternoons later, I walked past the spare room where Lila and her bridesmaids were arranging gift bags. Their laughter spilled into the hallway. Lila's voice rose above the others. After the wedding, Daniel and I are downsizing, she said. And that includes his mother. The room erupted in sympathetic hums. As if she were sharing a burden she deserved applause for carrying, I stood motionless, not trusting my ears. I wanted to believe I misunderstood. I wanted to believe exhaustion made her sound cruel. I backed away before anyone noticed. That evening, Daniel left his tablet on the counter. A message from Lila flashed across the screen. We need space. Your mom is suffocating us. After the wedding. We decide. I stared at the words until they blurred. Daniel walked in and reached for the tablet, unaware of what I had seen. He kissed my cheek distractedly. Long day, he muttered. I nodded. Unable to speak. The divide between us felt like a wall someone had been building brick by brick. And I had been too trusting to notice. Their wedding was supposed to celebrate a new beginning. For me, it was turning into an ending that had been planned long before I understood what role I played. And I could not yet see what Lila gained by making me the problem. By the time the musician tuned his guitar and the guests settled into their seats, I already felt unsteady. The hours before the ceremony had been a blur of whispered conversations and glances that slid away when I entered a room. I tried to stay useful, helped Mia with her shoes, straightened Daniel's tie, but the unease clung to me. Earlier that afternoon, I passed by a small circle of relatives near the dressing suite. Leela stood in the center, holding a flute of champagne. Her laughter rose above the din. She sold her house and then leached off us. She said, "What else do you call that?" A cousin gasped, then chuckled as if Lila had simply shared a spicy secret. Someone added, "Well, you have been patient with her." I stepped back before I could hear more. The word leached stuck to my skin like something wet and cold. When the reception began, the stage had already been set. People had been primed. That was why. When Lila dragged me forward and introduced me as the family parasite, the laughter erupted so quickly. It was not confusion. It was recognition. Aunt Miriam clapped her hands once. "She is our disgrace," she shouted, thrilled to have permission to say it aloud. A few others nodded like they had been waiting their turn. I froze, not because of the insult, but because in that moment, every small shift over the past years aligned into a single, brutal truth. This was not an impulsive remark. It was a narrative Lila had spent years feeding them. The missing house funds, the reimbursement forms, the whispers, every piece arranged to tell one story. Lila squeezed my wrist, leaning toward the crowd. "See, even she agrees." I had not said a word. Then Daniel stepped forward, his expression hollowing as if he were waking from a long sleep. He had swallowed so many small moments, but something in this one broke him open. Daniel stepped between us, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on Lila as if he were seeing her clearly for the first time in years. The music thumped in the background, but his voice cut straight through it. "Say it again," he said. Lila blinked. Daniel. It was a joke. Everyone understood that. He shook his head. Say it. Say what you just called my mother. Her chin lifted. Defiant. Fine. She takes advantage of us. She always has. You know it. Even if you pretend not to. A hush rippled through the crowd. Lila must have expected him to side with her. Instead, he turned toward me, and something in his face broke open. My mother sold her house so we could buy this one, he said, his voice steady. She moved into the smallest room without complaint. She watched our kids so we could work late. She bought groceries when money was tight. She cleaned, she cooked, and she never asked for anything. Lila's smile collapsed. Daniel. Stop, no. His tone hardened. I stopped seeing the red flags because I wanted peace. I let things slide. I pretended comments did not hurt because it was easier than confronting you. He swallowed hard. But I will not pretend tonight. People around us shifted, whispering. Someone turned down the music. A few relatives stared at the floor. Daniel looked straight at Lila. You humiliated her. Publicly. Intentionally. And I am done protecting your version of the story. His next words felt like a door slamming shut. Pack your things. You are not coming home with us tonight. A gasp rolled across the room. A glass shattered somewhere behind us. Lila stepped back as if he had struck her. You cannot be serious, she whispered. But he was. Grace appeared at my side, her arms steady around my back. Come on. Julie, she murmured. You do not need to stay in this circus. I let her guide me toward the exit. My legs felt weak. Not from shame this time, but from the sudden release of a weight I had carried for too long. Outside, the night air hit my skin like a shock. The wedding lights flickered behind us, and I realized the truth. I had no house waiting for me, and no plan for what came next. Grace did not give me time to fall apart. The morning after the wedding, she drove me straight to a small law office tucked between a bakery and an insurance agency. Inside waited a woman with sharp eyes and gentle hands, attorney Renee Collins, an elder law specialist. Renee motioned me into her office. Grace told me the basics. She said, but I need to hear it from you. My voice wavered as I described the move. The missing contribution, the reimbursement forms, the humiliation. Renee listened without interrupting, flipping through the copies of paperwork Grace had gathered. When she reached the reimbursement forms, her eyebrows lifted. These signatures are inconsistent, she said. Julie, did you authorize these filings? No, I whispered. I never even saw them. She set the papers aside. That alone is a problem for them. Then she opened the refinancing documents. And here your $200,000 contribution is nowhere. That is improper use of funds. Combined with the filings under your name, this paints a strong picture of elder exploitation. The word made my stomach twist. I never wanted to believe they would do that. Renee shook her head. You are not powerless. You have a legal claim and leverage. I swallowed hard. What does leverage mean? It means they do not get to decide your fate anymore, she said. We do? She typed quickly, drafting the first motions. I am filing to freeze any accounts tied to your contributions. That prevents them from moving or hiding funds while we prepare the case. My hands trembled on my lap. Grace placed her palm over mine. This is your line in the sand. Julie, she said. You are allowed to defend yourself. Renee printed the documents, sliding them toward me. Sign here. This is the beginning. I picked up the pen. For the first time in years, my hand did not shake from fear, it shook from certainty. Lila had told everyone I was a parasite. Now the truth was finally reaching the surface. Whether Lila would accept that truth or bury herself fighting it was no longer up to her. Chapter 9. The Reckoning of Lila Hart Bennett. Approximately 320 words. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Renee called me into her office 2 weeks after filing the first motions. Daniel was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair by the window. He looked like he had aged 10 years. Renee began without ceremony. "We have findings." She spread the documents across the table, far more than what Grace and I had gathered. "These," she said, tapping a set of pages, "are the forged reimbursement forms. The handwriting analysis came back conclusive." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "She signed my mother's name, that," Renee said, "and she submitted statements to the bank claiming Julie required financial support for basic needs. Most of those withdrawals went into her personal account." My breath caught. Personal account. Renee nodded and pointed to another packet. "We also found misuse of joint marital funds. She used the refinancing surplus to cover luxury expenses, vacations, purchases, and services unrelated to the home. None of that was disclosed." Daniel's voice broke. "I did not know. I swear to you, Mom, I did not know." Renee slid over a printout of text messages. These messages showed deliberate attempts to isolate Julie. Phrases like, "We decide after the wedding," and "Your mother is suffocating us." Establish intent. Daniel stared at the words as if seeing them carved in stone. I let everything slide. I kept thinking she was stressed, or I was imagining things. Renee clasped her hands. "The district attorney has opened a fraud and elder exploitation case. Julie, you have the right to pursue charges against both of them, but you indicated you want to protect your son." I nodded. Daniel ignored things, but he did not orchestrate them. "I am not destroying my son's life for his wife's choices." Daniel's shoulders shook. "Mom, I am so sorry for the years I did not listen, for not seeing what she was doing to you." His apology did not erase the hurt, but it settled something inside me, something that had been shaking for too long. Renee lifted the final document. "Our next step is accountability. Real accountability." And for the first time, revenge did not feel explosive or chaotic. It felt earned, measured, inevitable. Lila walked into the courthouse with the confidence of someone who believed consequences were optional. She spotted me in the hallway and smirked. "This will be dismissed," she said. "Daniel told me you do not want a war." "I do not," I answered. "But I do want the truth." She waved a manicured hand. "Truth is subjective. Julie, you blew everything out of proportion." Before I could respond, the bailiff called us in. The hearing felt cold and clinical, but the evidence did not waver. Renee presented every forged reimbursement form, every misuse of marital funds, every text that showed intentional manipulation. The district attorney laid out the full pattern: exploitation, coercion, financial abuse. Lila's composure cracked piece by piece. When the judge delivered the ruling, she finally broke. For the documented misuse of funds, the judge said, "You will repay every cent. The court is also imposing triple financial damages due to fraudulent intent." Lila gasped. "Triple? That is impossible for the unauthorized filings in Ms. Bennett's name." The judge continued, "Your professional license is hereby suspended pending review, and this court orders your actions to remain public record. Exploitation of an elderly family member is not a private matter." Daniel sat behind me, silent, his face pale. When we stepped outside, reporters swarmed, filming Lila as she covered her face. Unable to outrun what she had built, her reputation collapsed in an instant, faster than she had ever expected justice to move. I did not chase her. I only waited by the courthouse doorway until she passed me. She froze when she heard my voice. "You called me a parasite," I said, "but parasites feed off others. Today, you answered for the life you drained from me." She looked away first. Weeks later, the settlement arrived. I used it to buy a small cottage near the Ashley River. Nothing grand, just mine. A place where the quiet was gentle, not heavy. Daniel visited often. Our conversations were slow, careful, healing. I tended a modest garden, read in the afternoons, and felt a kind of peace I had forgotten existed. If this story moved you, please like, comment, or subscribe so others can find it too. And tell me when someone humiliates you publicly and feeds off your kindness for years. Do you forgive them or let justice speak for you?